want to talk to you a minute about an F-16 ride that I had.
Tell us all about it.
Okay, now then, my pilot that day was a British exchange officer. He let me fly from the back seat of the F-16 until we got into the target area. And so what was going on there was he all of a sudden took the airplane, and we have to zoom up to 15,000 feet to start a 45-degree dive bombing mission on this target down here. I have no concept of what that's going to look like. And all of a sudden, we're up here about 450 knots, and he strokes the afterburner a little bit, and we accelerate to 500 knots, and then he just rolls it up like this and starts pulling about 6.5 G's going down here. And all I can see is dirt in the cockpit saying, "I don't think I'm going to see my mother again." And we went through that several times, and then we did the strafing and all, and with the Gatling gun, and it was really interesting.
So how long did you serve in Southeast Asia?
I was there for 13 months, from January of '68 until February of '69. Then I had a real plum assignment.
And you deserved a real plum assignment after
Thank you, but it was. A lot of guys wondered how you got that, and I said, I don't know. I was an exchange officer with the Royal Australian Air Force. So went down and flew the same C-130s that we had in the Air Force, with the exception of the paint job and the armor plate in the cockpit. The Australians had contingents in Vung Tau and Phan Rang. Those are two bases in Vietnam. One of the interesting flights was to go from Butterworth in Malaya, where they staged out of, which is right next to Penang Island on the west coast of Malaysia. Longer flights was hauling all their medevacs back to Sydney, and that was about a 12 to a 13-hour flight, depending upon the winds.
So the Vietnam conflict hit home for you?
Oh yeah, for a period of about 40 months I was in country, at least once a month. You know. So that was wonderful. But the Australians were very welcoming. We had good relationships with allies, and that's the reason for the exchange officers program. It was a real plum.
So how long were you in the Air Force now?
I was in 27 years. I was blessed. And I want to thank all of the people in my career who were supportive, made it all possible to do this, and also the taxpayers who funded my travels around the world in the C-130. My year group, the 65-year group, didn't have very many officers in it who were in contracting. When I left Australia, I had an opportunity to go to graduate school with the Air Force Institute of Technology and their Civilian Institutions program, and I went down to Louisiana Tech in Ruston, Louisiana, and spent 18 months down there getting a master's degree in business. And I knew that you can be in operations or you can be in support. Yeah. And I thought, you know, well, throughout a career, if you've got one foot in each one, why, if something happens to you physically, at least you're not going to be cut off completely.
Sure.
And so the contracting business was very interesting. I was in Los Angeles with the Space Defense Program that was buying missiles and satellites for the Space Defense Program. You know, we've got satellites in synchronous orbit that tell when the fireworks begin. Mm-hmm. And then base contracting, you know, everything from contracting to doing mess hall contracts to fixing runways, and then off to the Pentagon, and I was a duty officer in the Air Force Operations Center. And then, because of my contracting experience, I got to be in foreign military sales for the equipment that we sell our allies. The countries that I dealt with were Spain, Portugal, Sweden, and Canada. And then following that, I had an opportunity to go down to Venezuela in the military group, where they were, at the time, the Venezuelans were buying F-16s.
So the Air Force offered you a rather broad career.
Oh, yeah, I am blessed.
Sure.
I am truly blessed. I look at it in the sense of there's an opportunity to do things. The veterans that look back on their careers, I talk to a number of them, and they say, you know, I'd do this all over again, because it was a blessing to get to do what you wanted to do, And it was a blessing to have these educational opportunities, not only with the things that have to do directly with aviation and contracting, but the professional military education schools that are out there, the skills that people can learn that are actually post-service, ways to earn a living.
The veterans that may be listening to this interview, do you have anything you want to say to them?
I do. I want to say thank you. I look at this from a standpoint of the sacrifice that people have made with families, with wounds, and this is where some of us are just so blessed that we haven't had a hit in the terms of having to bleed for your pay.
Right.
And looking at that, why it's very interesting to get an opportunity to say thank you. Well, ladies and gentlemen, when we talk about the veterans, it's important that we kind of reward people for what they do, and the awards that people get, the vets carry around, and you can see everything from license plates to what they have. And I'd like to draw your attention to one of the awards that was given to one of my pilot training classmates. He was in another section, but his name is Lance Syjon. He was the first Air Force Academy graduate to get the Medal of Honor. And he paid the ultimate price. When we talk about all of the things that the vets do, I don't think that we give enough credence to what they have done and how much they have paid for their sacrifices. And I would ask your support. Thanks again for listening to me give a little bit of a story about my wonderful career, and thank the taxpayers and all the people that made this possible. This is not about me, it's about the vets.